Picture this. You're walking through Rome's filthiest pleasure district, the Suburra, where the streets stink of cheap wine, sweat, and sin. You pass brothels with creaking doors and laughing men, when suddenly, your eyes land on a woman whose face you know. Your stomach drops. Beneath the smudged makeup and the cheap perfume is not some nameless prostitute. It's Valeria Messalina, the Empress of Rome herself, wife of Emperor Claudius, working a brothel room like a common street girl. And the worst part? She's not there because she has to be. She's there because she wants to be. She isn't a desperate woman forced into this life. She's the most powerful woman in the empire, sneaking out of the palace at night to challenge Rome's prostitutes in contests of sheer sexual endurance. And trust me, if you think Roman decadence begins and ends with Caligula, what you're about to hear will make Caligula look like a shy altar boy. Because Messalina didn't just misuse her power, she turned her sexuality into a weapon that would shake the empire to its foundations and seal her own horrific end. The year was 38 CE, and Rome was buzzing with celebration. The city's marble temples were draped with laurel, streets were swept clean, and flowers floated on the Tiber. A wedding had united Emperor Claudius with the dazzling young Valeria Messalina. She was barely 15, a girl by modern standards. But in Roman eyes, she was the perfect empress. Her family name reached back to the earliest days of the Republic. Her skin was as pale as polished marble, her hair a golden cascade under the sunlight, her features sculpted like the statues of Venus in the Forum. Claudius, 13 years older, walked with an uneven gait, his body marked by the awkward stiffness and tremors of cerebral palsy. But what he lacked in physical grace, he made up for with a sharp administrative mind. And now, he had something more, a wife who embodied everything Rome valued: nobility, fertility, and the divine bloodlines that kept emperors on the throne. In public, Messalina was perfection. She bore him 2 children, attended state events with a serene smile, and moved through religious ceremonies with measured dignity. To the people, she was the picture of imperial virtue. But appearances in Rome were often masks, and Messalina's mask was hiding a hunger that would soon become unstowed. It began as faint ripples in the palace gossip. Servants whispered about the empress dismissing her guards late at night. They noticed her slipping into plain tunics and coarse cloaks, garments that clashed violently with her usual silks and jewels. At first, it seemed like the harmless rebellion of a bored young woman trapped in the rigid protocols of imperial life. But those who followed her found she was not wandering Rome's elegant streets. No, she was descending into its rotting underbelly, the Suburra. The Suburra was a tangle of narrow alleys and cheap taverns. The air stank of spilled wine, cooking oil, and human waste. Oil lamps flickered over the red-painted doors of brothels where women lounged in thresholds, calling to passing men. Messalina didn't just walk through, she studied. She watched how prostitutes tilted their heads, how they touched a man's arm just enough to hook him, how they bargained over price and time. She memorized faces, routines, and the hierarchy of Rome's sex trade, from street corner girls to high-priced courtesans with wealthy patrons. This wasn't idle curiosity, it was preparation. The first fall. Her descent into the Suburra's world took its first step during Saturnalia in 40 CE. Saturnalia was chaos incarnate. Masters served slaves, rules dissolved, and drunken chants echoed through the city until dawn. People wore masks, traded clothes, and gorged themselves on food and sin. While Claudius led the official rites, Messalina slipped away. Dressed as a commoner, her golden hair hidden under a dark wig, she approached a brothel whose door hung half open, spilling warm light and the smell of incense onto the street. The brothel keeper, a sharp-eyed man with gold rings on his fingers and the face of someone who had seen every kind of depravity, sized her up. She offered herself for the night, no pay required. Thinking she was some rich woman seeking a thrill, he agreed. What happened next left the women there whispering for months. Messalina didn't just work, she dominated. One man after another, without pause, without fatigue. The other women began to stop, retreating to their rooms to rest. Messalina stayed. When the brothel keeper told her the night was over, she demanded more clients. Only when the streets had emptied and no man remained did she finally leave. Her disguise damp with sweat, her face glowing not from shame, but from triumph. By the following months, she had turned her outings into a military-level operation. A team of loyal servants smuggled her out of the palace under layers of disguise: wigs, soot-smeared cheeks, coarse wool dresses. She invented names and false backgrounds, passing from one brothel to another, and then she raised the stakes. Competitions. Messalina challenged Rome's most famous courtesans to see who could take the most men in a single night. The prizes weren't just gold, they were bragging rights in a city where reputation mattered more than breath itself. The most infamous took place in 41 CE. Her rival was Sila, a courtesan so skilled she was courted by senators. The venue was a private house, lit by hundreds of lamps packed with wealthy Romans. Wine flowed like water, dice clattered on the floor as bets were placed. Sila was careful, pacing herself to 25 clients before declaring herself done. The crowd cheered until they saw Messalina still working. She passed 30 and only stopped when there was no one left to serve. The laughter died. Men looked at one another in disbelief. They had not just watched a contest, they had watched the wife of the emperor break every boundary of Roman decency and do it without shame. By 42 CE, Messalina's ambitions had shifted. It was no longer about personal pleasure, it was about control. She set up a luxury brothel in a villa near the Campus Martius. The decor was opulent, marble floors, silk curtains, gold-plated oil lamps. But the women who worked there were not street girls. They were noble-born wives and daughters, blackmailed into service under threats to their family's honor and fortunes. The clients were Rome's most powerful men: senators, military commanders, merchants with influence in the grain trade, and every whispered word, every act of humiliation, was recorded by Messalina's hidden spies. She could destroy any man who entered, and she knew it. Public degradation. By 44 CE, secrecy bored her. She began staging public orgies disguised as religious festivals. Invitations were sent to senators, their wives, their sons and daughters, all under the pretense of honoring the gods. The gatherings began solemnly, with hymns and offerings at the altar. But soon wine was poured, clothes loosened, and the ceremonies dissolved into a frenzy. People who thought they were attending a pious event found themselves trapped in a performance of degradation they could never admit to. It was genius blackmail. The shame was a leash she could pull at will. Then, in 48 CE, she committed the act that even Rome could not forgive. With Claudius away in Ostia, Messalina held a full legal wedding to her lover, the young and handsome senator Gaius Silius. It was public, witnessed, and binding under Roman law. She wore the bridal veil, offered sacrifices, and signed the contracts. She called herself his empress, issued orders in his name, and began speaking as though Claudius had already been replaced. When Claudius learned the truth, he thought it absurd, until evidence flooded in. He rode back to Rome with troops, finding Messalina in the palace gardens still celebrating. Witnesses say her face drained of color as she realized the game was over. Her execution was swift. Her name was erased from monuments, her statues destroyed, and her memory condemned by law. The woman who ruled Rome through lust had been erased from its story.